Hi everyone, so in about a week and a half or so I'm going on a Stampin' Up weekend retreat, and as some of you will know, I've been struggling for about the last month or so with my back, so I've not been able to do any crafting or any YouTube videos for my channel. So the pain that I was struggling with is starting to ease, and we've been asked if we want to bring some swaps to the retreat. Now, I've never been on one of these retreats before, so I thought I would make some swaps and then see if anybody wants to swap with me. Now, I'm not going to show you right at the moment what I'm making because I've not actually made them yet, but it is something that I have done a video on previously on my channel, so I will show you at the end of this video. And I'm going to be making a little sewing project, but I want to make some like tags or bag toppers for the little bag that I'm going to put them in. So that's what this video is about today. So and I'm also going to be using the ScanNCut, but just let me explain what I'm going to use. So I'm going to be using the stitched So Sweetly dies, and I'm going to be using this stitched label die, and I'm going to cut these out using my die cutting machine in basic white cardstock. The fabric that I'm going to be using for the project is here, and obviously you can see it's in shades of pink and green and white. There's a little bit of grey in it and even a little bit of brown, and I think the closest colour pink in our Stampin' Up cardstock is Blushing Bride. So I'm going to be using the ScanNCut to cut an element from this card, which I'm going to show you, and once those elements are cut, I'm thinking that I'm going to run them through this embossing folder just to give them a little bit of texture. So I just want to explain what I'm doing and then show you the process. Now, I've measured this die and I've worked out that if I cut strips of white paper at 2.5 inches wide, I can cut 3 of these dies from each strip of paper, and I can get 3 strips from a piece of UK A4, so that will give me 9 dies, and I'm going to make 20 swaps, so that's kind of like 2.5 pieces of A4 cardstock, if you like. And just to make it a little bit easier for the video, I'm going to be using my small die cutting machine, and that's why I'm cutting the strips at 2.5 inches wide. I've got my Stampin' Up trimmer, and I'm just going to start by putting the A4 cardstock in my trimmer on the 8 1/4 side, and I'm going to cut 2.5 inch strips. Now, by the time you actually get to see this video, I will have been on the retreat. So, you know, there's no need to worry about anybody who may be going on the retreat seeing this. So there's my 3 strips, and I've got that piece left over. Now, if I decide I want to put a greeting or any other embellishment on these little tags or bag toppers or whatever they end up, you know, going to be, I've obviously got these little strips left over. If not, I can put these in my scraps and use them in future card projects for greetings. Okay, so I've got my little mini Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. I'm going to put in platform 1. I'm going to put in one of my cutting plates. I'm going to put in a piece of my card, and I'm going to put in my label, and then my second cutting plate on top, and I'm going to roll that through the So there is my first die cut shape with its little stitching around the edge. So now obviously I just need to move up my paper, put my die in again and roll this through, and obviously I've got to do this for all my strips. So I'll just do one complete strip for now. So that's my second, and like I say, I can get 3 shapes from these strips. So there's my first 3 labels all cut. So I'll carry on, I'll cut the rest of them until I've got 20, and then I'll come back. Okay, so that didn't take very long. So this is my 20 die cut stitched shape dies from the Stitched So Sweetly set of dies. So I've measured across, and this measures 3.5 inches. So I'm now going to score each one of these in half at 1.75, and being as though I've already got my trimmer out, I'm going to put the blade out of the way and I'm going to score them using the scoring tool. So these just need to be lined up at 1.75, so 1 3/4 inches, and scored. And I'm going to do that on all of them, and then I'll move on to the next part, which is using the ScanNCut. So one other thing I forgot to mention is that the little bags that I'm using for this little gift are going to be our 3x6 gusseted cellophane bags, and these are still available in our annual catalogue, as is the Tasteful Textile embossing folder, which I think I'm going to use, and the Stitch So Sweetly. So all the products will be listed under the video and in the accompanying blog posts, with a direct link to my online store. So now I've got those all done, I can put those on one side for now, and now I'm going to move on to the ScanNCut part of the video. Okay, so now I'm going to cut the shapes that I'm going to be using from the ScanNCut machine. So I've got my ScanNCut machine turned on. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go into the wrench icon and I'm going to find the cut area, and I'll just change this back because I've already altered it. So normally you would go into your wrench and your cut area would show in here if you're using 12x12, which is normally your standard size. And I'm going to be cutting 20 of this shape that I'm going to be using from this machine, and I want to get the machine to work out whether the 20 shapes will fit on the piece of A4 card that I'm going to be using. So I don't want my mat area to show as 12x12, because when I ask the machine to arrange the shapes for me, it will arrange them over a 12x12 area, and that's not what I'm using. So I'm going to come into the cut area. I am using a piece of Blushing Bride cardstock, which is a Stampin' Up product which I sell in my online shop, and it's A4, and in the UK A4 is 8 1/4 inches wide by 11 3/4 inches high, and that's how I've got the card already loaded onto my ScanNCut mat. So I'm going to drag in these handles until the width comes to about 8. There, 8.11 is fine, because as I say, the cardstock is 8.25. And then I'm going to, the height actually is already about right. The height of a piece of A4 card in the UK is 11 3/4, which is 11.75. So I can leave that as it is. So basically what I'm telling the machine is that this is the area I'm going to be using, and when I choose the shapes in a few minutes, this is the area I want you to calculate whether I can get the 20 that I need from this area, rather than trying to put them all over a 12 by 12 mat, which I'm not. I'm using a 12 by 12 mat, but I'm not using a piece of 12 by 12 card. I hope that makes sense. So I'm going to say OK, and OK, so that's set my cut area. So I'm going to come into patterns, and I'm going to come into this second icon, and then I'm going to come into this icon that's got like the clock and the what looks like an Eiffel Tower. You probably have these on any model ScanNCut machine. I think these are pretty generic shapes that were, you know, on any of the first CM models as well. And this is the one I'm going to be using, the key. Now I could adjust the size from here, but as you can see, the key is on at a diagonal, which makes it look as though it's like nearly 4 inches in width and height, and it isn't actually. So I'm going to say OK, OK, and I'm going to set it onto the mat. And then I'm going to come to edit and object edit, and because I've only got one item on my mat, it's automatically chose that item for me. Then I'm going to come into the size. So as you can see now, the height is actually 4.5 by just under 2.5. So it will be easier for me to adjust the size to what I need doing it on this page rather than doing it at the beginning when the actual shape was on a diagonal. So I've kind of calculated from the dies that you saw me cut a few minutes ago with my manual die cutting machine that I want this key to be about 2.5 inches high. So I'm going to use the minus icon next to height and take the size down until it's 2.5. Okay, and that's made it just under 1.5 inches wide. So it's 2.5 inches tall by just under 1.5 inches high. So I'm going to say OK. Now I'm going to come into the icon that's got the plus on it, which is the one that lets me add more shapes. And I want 20 of these shapes in total. So I'm going to just keep hitting the plus icon until I get to 20 and say OK. Now I'm going to say OK, and I'm going to hit the 3 red boxes, which lets me choose either certain elements on the mat or all the elements on the mat. And in this particular case, I want them all selected. So I'm going to use the icon on the right hand side. You can now see that those 20 shapes have all got individual red bounding boxes around them. And that's what I want. I want them all selected. So I'm going to say OK. OK, and then I'm going to come to this icon here that's a square with some various different shapes in it, and I'm going to select that. Now, depending on what I am using, what shape I'm using, you've got options here as to how all these shapes will be put onto my cut area. So if I choose the first one, it will put all the shapes in any way it can to fit within this area that I've selected. So the area in white, the area in grey is not selected. That means anything that's in there will not cut. If I choose the next icon down, it will kind of flip them. It'll put them like vertically, but like top and tail, if you like. And if I choose the bottom one, it will just put them all in one direction. I'm not particularly bothered how they cut, so long as I can get all 20 within this area that I've designated as my A4 piece of card. So I'm just going to choose the top one and wait for it to process. I'm not sure how well you can see it, but basically what it's done, it's fitted all the 20 into this cut area, which is what I want, in the best way it thinks to use the piece of card most efficiently. So the first 3 it's put all kind of horizontal, then it's put some on an angle, and then it's kind of just fitted the others in. As I say, I don't really mind how it does it so long as I get the 20 cut from my piece of A4 card in the most efficient way. So I'm going to say that's OK. Now I've already preloaded my piece of Blushing Bride onto my ScanNCut mat. So I'm just going to load that into the machine. and I've positioned the piece of card so that it fits in the top left hand corner of my mat. I'll try and turn you around to show you. So you can see that the top left hand corner is right in the corner of my mat. So that means that all these shapes should cut out perfectly from this piece of card. So now I'm going to say OK, I'm going to say please select, and I'm going to say cut. And then it's going to process all that information, and now I'm going to press start. And because I've got an auto blade machine, it's going to check the depth of the piece of card that's loaded, and then it's already checked the depth of the mat, which I think you may have just missed while I was moving the camera, and now it's going to cut each one of these 20 shapes for me, and it says it's going to take about 4 minutes. Okay, so that's finished. So I'm going to say OK, and I'm going to unload the mat. So now I've finished with the ScanNCut, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to be doing with these shapes. I'm just going to peel away the waste, and as you can see, it cut them the most efficient way. So I've still got this piece left that I can just cut off and put in my scraps. And here are all the shapes. So I'm just going to take them off the mat. And I've not made this project. This is literally just kind of what I've come up with in my head. And I just thought I would take you along. I'm going to put the mat out of the way for now. Now, I'm going to be using this Tasteful Textile embossing folder, and it's one of Stampin' Up's 3D embossing folders. So the die cutting machine that I use, well, I have two. For bigger dies and embossing folders, I use a snap machine, which I've got just over to the right. And it's one of those that you just load it up and press the button and it does it. And then I also have the Stampin' Up Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine, the mini. And the mini, to be fair, even though it's a mini, cuts the majority of my dies. It just won't take this embossing folder. It's slightly too wide for the opening. So what I want to do now, just to give these little keys a bit more, you know, rather than them just being plain pink card, I'm going to emboss them. So I'm just going to pop in as many as I can get in this embossing folder, and I'm going to run it through my die cutting machine and do as many as I can at once. Now, because this is a 3D embossing folder, as I say, with my machine that I use, I know I've got to use an A and a B plate. So I've got my A and I've got my B. It doesn't matter which way round you put these. I'm just going to run that through now and let my machine emboss all these keys. Okay, so I'm going to open this up, and I'm not sure how well you'll see this. I'll try and hold it up. But the key is all now embossed. So I'm going to take all these out of here, and I'm going to carry on and do all the rest until I've got all 20 of them, all with this embossed design on them. I've got all my little keys, I've got all my toppers, and I've got my 3x6 gusseted bags. So now it's just going to be a case of putting in my little gift and then using this topper to fasten up this bag. I may or may not add something else yet, I'm not sure, but for now I've kind of got the components. Okay, so this video has been made over several days because, as some of you may know, I've been struggling with my back and have had nerve damage in my leg, which has meant for the last 5 weeks or more I've literally not been able to craft. I've hardly been able to walk, I've not been able to sit. So at the time of recording this section of the video, it's now just only a few days to go before the retreat. I think I did tell you at the beginning that these are retreat gifts that I'm making for swaps. So I thought rather than make a stack of cards, I'd do something a little bit different. So these are key holders or key fobs. Now, I've made these on my channel before. I will put a link in the video to how I make these. These particular ones, I've made them slightly smaller because I wanted to use these 3x6 gusseted bags from Stampin' Up that I sell in my online shop. And normally, when I've made these fobs in the past, I've started off with a piece of 12-inch long fabric, and then obviously when you fold that in half and you add the hardware on, it wouldn't fit into the bag properly. So I've made these slightly smaller and they literally just fit in. If I put them on an angle, I've just got enough room to fasten up this bag. So what I've also bought is some little mini Skittles as well. So I've made all the others and I'll show you them at the end, but I've just got the last few components and I just thought I'd show you. Obviously these don't have to be for swaps. I mean, if you do craft fairs, you know, would be able to make something like this quite simply and package it up. If I hadn't been feeling so unwell and literally doing these on the last minute, I probably would have decorated these up a bit more. But to be perfectly fair, I've not been on a retreat before. I have never made swaps or anything like this before. And as I say, I have just been struggling with my health. So this is as basic and as simple as it's going to get from me, I'm afraid. But at least I've made some and, you know, it's a token. So I'm going to start by putting my little project in to the bags. I'm just going to do the last two. As I say, I'll show you all my others in a minute. And I've noticed since I've been taking all this painkilling medication, I'm kind of all fingers and thumbs, so if I'm fumbly, you'll have to forgive me. I've got my shapes that you saw me cut in the earlier part of the video, which I cut and then pre-scored. So I'm just going to pop this over the top of the bag, and then I've just got a regular office stapler, and I'm just going to put a staple in so it obviously doesn't go through the fabric. And then you saw me cut all these shapes with the ScanNCut. I've added a bit of baker's twine, which I can tell you was a job and a half with me being all fumbly, these tiny little bits of baker's twine. But anyway, I've made all the bows, and I've used some of the pink and grey from the Pastel Pearls on these projects because there is a bit of grey in the fabric as well. And then I've just put some little mini dimensionals onto the back, and then I'm going to position this key over the white tag label so it hides the staple. Okay, so it couldn't be any easier really, this project. And as I say, you know, don't just think, oh well, I'm not going to a retreat or I don't need to make any swaps. There'd be a good idea for maybe teacher gifts if you have children at school, or like I say, if you're going to be doing, you know, craft fairs, or you want to donate something to somebody that might be, you know, raising money for something. Now this one I've not put on particularly straight, so I'm just going to undo that one. Like I say, I am a bit fumble fingered. There you go, that's better. And then position this just so that it hides the staple. So there are my projects. Here's all the rest of them. So I've got 20 swaps. I think there's about, I can't remember, there's 20 something people go into this retreat, but it was suggested I did 20. And I've also been asked if I would like to make a project to go like on a table, so that everybody makes a project and it just goes on like a top table and everybody just has a chance to look at a project as well. And I am going to film that video. So as I say, there are my 20 swaps, all made identically. These have got the pink pearls in, these have got the grey pearls in, and that's what I'm going to be taking. Then on the back, that's what I actually need to do. Let me just do this. I've created a label with my Dymo printer, which I'm just going to put on the back, and it basically just says Stampin' Up September 21 Retreat from me, Apple Lover 53. It's got my website on it, and then the information about any Stampin' Up products that I've used. So that's just going to go on the back of each bag. And that's it. So I hope you like the project. As I say, it has been made over several days. You may or may not notice that I've literally just had my nails done. This is about the first time in 4.5 weeks. As I say, because the retreat is only a few days away, and I am a lot more mobile, but I'm not 100%. And I am still in two minds whether to go, to be honest, but it's all booked for. I've paid for it all, and I've made all these now, so I'm gonna go and just see what happens. Anyway, that's my simple project. I hope you like it. Please give the video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Thank you.